Hey, what's up? It's Sam from the 2448. I'm Chelsea pretending to be Sam. I'm sick. Oh yeah. I'm with Andy Bozzo. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, you nailed it.
I heard you have to really do it right.
You got to hit those Z's, man.
Dude, that's the ticket.
But if you say Bozzo, I don't cry.
I was really worried. And then I was like, well, earlier I got into try it with a Borat accent and that wasn't right.
Yeah.
And then I was just, anyway, welcome to the show. We appreciate having you on. We're going to talk about Tablet Command today. Well, tell me about your company. I want to know, like, what do you guys do and what's your company called and that sort of stuff. Kick it off.
Okay, so we are Tablet Command. You can find us at tabletcommand.com, and we are incident management, response, notification for public safety all around the United States and Canada. So there are several fire departments around the United States every fire department around the United States, and quite honestly, every police vehicle that you look into has a computer that's bolted inside the
like
vehicle
MDT
or the
whatever.
apparatus. The MDT,
yeah.
And so we do MDT. We feature an MDT interface with the Tablet Command interface. We integrate with all the computer-aided dispatch companies out there.
Interesting.
Some are much easier to work with than others, but from the end-to-end experience inside the fire station, you can literally have your iPhone in your pocket, be alerted to a call, which a lot of companies do that, but we do it the best because the type of information that you get just in the palm of your hand is not only CAD information, but it's a lot of really rich mapping and situational awareness and situational intelligence that you're using while you're en route to getting in your apparatus. And then en route, you're mapping, you're routing, you're looking at overhead shots as an MDT solution. And when you arrive on the call, if you're in a position to be in the command position or in command mode, you can remove that MDT or toggle over to a secondary MDT that also has Tablet Command and maintain full personnel accountability throughout the incident. And everything that you're doing on that incident is time-stamped.
That's awesome. Why are you like... I feel like getting into that sort of businesses, that's a very specific. A lot of guys like, I'm going to start a bakery, and you've got a business that does high level incident management. How do you get into that?
Great question. So I have been a firefighter since 1998 and a student of the game, throughout that whole time. And the way that we tracked personnel on the fire ground and during emergencies was always analog. So Velcro tags moving from one strip of Velcro literally to another strip of Velcro, or using a dry erase marker to write down, scribe. You're writing really fast and listening to the radio. That's inaccurate. Or you're using what's called a run sheet, which, was showing up on a printer in your station. But then, there's this kind of shuffle of apparatus that happens, especially in a lot of metro areas where you might be on a medical, but it's a low-level medical, and then you've got a structure fire that, breaks loose in your first due. So you add yourself to that. So, a lot of times incident commanders were arriving at scenes with incomplete information.
What's their normal?
I'm sorry?
So what's their normal, like for our viewers that might not be public safety experienced? What would they want to know when they get there? Like, what's the data that's important?
Yeah, that's a really good question. They want to know what's happening, the correct address, a satellite view, possibly of that incident. But the most important thing is who is coming, what type of apparatus or type of resources are coming to the call. And if that's getting shuffled after some hard analog distribution of that information, then you as an incident commander still have to spend that time transcripting from the radio rather than looking up at the emergency and watching how that's developing, because that's a very dynamic thing. Fires today are doubling like every 30 seconds because of all the petrochemical based items that we have inside of structures. Wildland fires are burning hotter and faster than they ever have. And so to be behind because you're doing administrative work, writing down, it's a bad thing. It's not a good thing. And so That really came to a head in 2007 in my own fire department when we lost 2 firefighters in the line of duty. They were dispatched to a call as a single unit. It turned out that it was a structure fire instead of a fire alarm, which was the initial dispatch. They did everything that every firefighter would do. They laid their lives down to try and save 2 elderly citizens that were trapped. And the unfortunate byproduct of an incident that develops that way is the incident command and the personnel accountability of who's doing what, when, where, and how got really lost in the fog of war.
Yeah.
And so myself and my co-founder, Will Pidgeon, who's our CTO and also the current CEO, said there has to be a better way. And in 2007, that was about the dawn of, our trusty iPhones. The iPhone 1 was coming out. And, honestly, I came up with the idea of tablet command while playing the game Words with Friends, where you slide a tile onto the playing board and you spell a word, and someone in some other part of the world understands what word you spelled and builds a word off of that. Well, to me, that was like saying to a supervisor, a battalion chief on the 15th floor of an apartment fire, hey, I'm sending you 4 fire engines right now to complete this work of primary search, fire attack, and evacuation of citizens.
So you were kind of thinking through, like, someone inside a building can, like, if they can get real-time updates, they know what's going on, they can change their tactics based on real-time stuff. If I get the data to them.
Absolutely. Inside a building, working a division of a hurricane, tornado outbreak, a wildland fire, a train derailment. You're going to have supervisors scattered everywhere, whether that's within the confines of a neighborhood because of a house fire or over thousands of acres with a hurricane or a wildland fire. You're going to need ways to communicate to them that sometimes bypasses radio communications, because those get really garbled during high stress dynamic incidents. So giving someone a really simple visual interface, the time was just right in the late 2000s, 2009, 2010, 2011. Guys were already thinking of this, and they were bringing these devices to work for other workarounds. So it was like, all right, let's create an all-in-one platform where everything's under a single pane of glass. You're not shuffling literally through a file cabinet. You're not pulling out of some drawer in your incident command vehicle some piece of paper that can get wet or damaged or that you got to scratch out. Let's bypass the whiteboard. So that's really how it was born. It was born out of 2 line of duty deaths that hit really, really close to home.
Yeah.
And then
were you on those incidents?
I was not. I had been on the job about 8 years, but I transferred to Contra Costa County. And those who are listening to the podcast know that you don't really transfer in the fire service. You do now because there's a shortage of firefighters. But back in the day, a lateral transfer. So I actually had to recruit
go back to fire academy. Yeah. Oh, that sucks. Yeah.
So I was in the academy. I'd had a bunch of fires under my belt from the Tacoma Fire Department and the Kent Fire Department previous to that, and Cal Fire previous to that.
So you're up in Seattle area.
Well, no, I grew up in the Monterey Bay area, but I was living in the Seattle area when I transferred back down to Contra Costa County.
Oh, interesting.
So I was a Tacoma firefighter. Yeah.
No way. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. We have an office in Auburn, which is up that way. And
very familiar with it.
We looked at moving out there. And when I was looking, I was like, my EMT wasn't going to transfer. My fire was kind of, but not really. So then it was like, if I move out there, there's no way I can do it. Because it's all like, going to go back to the academy. I'm like, 10 years on the job, I'm not going back to the academy,
Right.
But
I did it at 34.
No way.
Yeah. So, I had to, it's a good excuse for staying in shape.
I bet. Can you share a little bit? I want to, it's such an interesting deal. Cause like when I talk about, first responder stuff with other firefighters, they understand and they know a little bit of the story and like how it works. But what we found is like a lot of folks listening to our show, they may not have that firsthand experience of like, everybody thinks, oh yeah, firefighters show up, they got everything together. They know all the the organization is clean, the radio chatter is clear. But like one of the things, I was with a guy this weekend. We had a house fire in town. I'm working at the office, just doing some weekend catch up. And the alarm goes off, and it's for structure fire. And it's an area of town that I know is like it's going to be burning. Like where that part of town, it's a hike. Yeah. So we strike out over there, and then there's like all this radio chatter, and he's like, "How do you keep track of what's going on?" It's like, the radio is like old school, super. We have this $5,000 radio, nicest radio you can buy, and it still is like too much communication. And you have to have that much communication. I need this stuff. I need these resources. I need to go to there, set water here. Here's what we got when we get there. But it's funny, like, can you paint the picture of maybe what you would think the data set is like versus what it is actually like, just for our listeners, so they can kind of hear from someone that's been on the job a while?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, what I'll say after 25, I guess in my 26th year on the job, is like, what you think is going to happen doesn't happen. We can train for all sorts of scenarios, but we go to about a fire a tour in my jurisdiction, where, we've got a pretty good clip of reps. And I'm always learning something new. And if you're not, I will say this too, if you're not learning something new, then you got to go back to the drawing board and figure out what you can do to sort of retool your thinking set, because it's really important to keep sharp and keep on learning. But, things can, even from the hydrant showing up on the MDT to it being out of service, or a car being parked in front of it, throwing a wrench in the system like that even if you have the cleanest data set in the world, can really throw off the sequencing and the rhythm of, everybody's actions on that call. So one of the things we'll teach recruits in the academy, that's great. You executed it A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You did all of that. But what happens if someone takes out C? You have to recover. It's not about like how well you can memorize and execute. It's about how you can recover from things that go wrong, because things will go wrong on the fire ground. And so it's maintaining sort of, you've got a lot of radio chatter. And it's, that standard house fire suddenly is a grow house that has, an electrical bypass. And so everything is energized and you're getting electrocuted, walking in the front door. And so you're defaulting to training, and you're training so well. And I say, learn the box so you can operate outside of the box, because most of what we do is absolutely outside of the box. It's great when the fires go by the numbers, but honestly, what we train for and what keeps us up, literally keeps us up at night, waking us up in the middle of the night, is those scenarios that are completely off script, because that's really what you're going to run into.
We teach people here, like one of the first lessons I heard in the fire academy was plan, backup, and back up to the backup. And like at any given time, our instructor would be like, all right, you're going in that door's locked. Door actually is barricaded, whatever. Like, now what? Or like, okay, you're doing whatever. Okay, patient just coded. Like, wait a minute, this is a Band-Aid call. Like, okay, now, and then, okay, how am I going to go through? Oh, truck ran out of fuel. Now what's next? Okay, then, and like all that plan backup and backup to the backup. As soon as you go to your backup, what's your next new backup to your backup?
Absolutely.
It's such an important skill that firefighters have. And it's one that translates uniquely well to business.
Right. No, 100%. I mean, as a side anecdote to that, so I'm working as an acting battalion chief right now, but prior to that, I was a captain on a USAR company and a rescue company. And so we get a lot of extrications and a lot of heavy rescue. And you kind of have to come with a degree of humility as a captain and say, I don't know it all. Nobody does. If they say they do, I would not trust that person. So one of our standard plays, if we were first on scene, we would be the rescue group supervisor. If we weren't, then we would be working for the rescue group supervisor, basically doing their bidding. But one of the things that I tell newer truck captains or rescue captains is, when you roll up to that extrication, have a plan A, have a plan B, grab that next in captain and tell them specifically, dude, I need a plan C and a plan D. Because again, that plastic may not peel away the way that you thought it would, or that piece of metal may not bend up the way that you want to free up that person's leg, because the tree stump that they're wrapped around is affecting
It doesn't behave
that.
like metal, or something.
Yeah, you always have to have a contingency plan. It's the same thing with like having escape routes and safety zones during structure fires, wildland fires, whatever you're doing. You need to have that sort of fallback position to then reassess. It's really important. It is a huge skill to cultivate. And you're right, it does translate into business of, if this isn't working, what then? Do we fold up and go home? We cannot.
Yeah. Well, so take me through that journey a little bit. If you're obviously like your primary plan is be a fireman and use the tools at your disposal, your backup.
Yep.
These tools suck. Let's build better ones. Tell me about this business. How did you get into, I feel like being a firefighter and then starting a tech company, they're pretty different paths.
Yeah.
I mean, how did you get into that? What was the story?
That is a whole can of worms. So, the initial intention was to create a digital tactical worksheet that could timestamp everything and track everyone on the fire ground.
Primarily just for hey, this is when, okay, extrication's complete now, whatever, just time, that sort of thing.
Yeah, with built-in checklists, a built-in tactical worksheet. And so, the initial mission of the company was, let's get these guys away from pencil and paper or notepads, because if I'm the incident commander and I got to hand it over to you because I'm now going to manage a RIC or vice versa, you got to be able to read my scrawl under stress. And so tactical worksheets were looking a lot like Jackson Pollock paintings. If, people that are listening, Jackson Pollock just painted with a lot of brush strokes, and it looked like a kid was spraying paint onto a butcher paper.
And a tactical worksheet's a standard tool in your toolbox. It's like this, okay, I'm out of structure fire. Here's my worksheet, go.
Exactly. And some people, their tactical worksheet is a whiteboard. And other people, their tactical worksheet is a yellow steno pad. In other people, it's an actual tactical worksheet that they get into a file cabinet, a real file cabinet in their BC's vehicle and pull out.
Yeah.
And we were like, let's shorten the time from arriving at the incident to actually being engaged in the incident by having that quasi ready for them when at the word go. And so, initially, like I was referencing earlier, a lot of incident commanders, they get on the radio or they're listening to the radio and they start writing down first alarm units. If they break a second alarm or they strike a second alarm, they got to write those down too. And that's over tactical traffic that they're listening to.
Versus like just pulling the run card. No, all right, got the next.
Correct.
Second alarm's on the way. Boom.
So we just said, let's just, sorry for moving the mic there. We just said, let's park all of that under a single pane of glass. In 2013, we arrived at what we thought was like what we call an MVP, or what they call in the tech world an MVP, the minimum viable product. Like, what could affect in a positive way the incident commander's experience, and therefore keep the rank and file who are actually in the building safe. And so we launched a free version, actually a paid sort of premium version and a free version of Tablet Command on the App Store. And we did that in 2013. Backing up a little bit, when we decided,
I just launched this app in the App Store. Probably had to figure out how to develop an app first, huh?
100%. And so, once I kind of had that epiphany with Words with Friends, it was a lot of drawings on paper. And then it was reaching out to Will, who has a tech background and computer science background, and saying, hey man, I want to get this thing from my drawings onto an iPad because tablets are coming.
Yeah. Oh, and that's right. It would have been before tablets, huh? 2007.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean,
so funny. I think of the iPad.
I remember in, I probably conceived of the idea, if I get the timeline right, the event happened, the line of duty event happened in 2007. I probably had this epiphany sometime in either 2008 or 2009, made a bunch of drawings for a few weeks, and then reached out to Will and said, hey man, I think I'm onto something. Let's maybe think about making a product.
Yeah. How do you guys know each other?
We worked together in the same fire department. He was Contra Costa County firefighter.
Oh, he's a fireman too. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So he's a unicorn in that he has a fundamental background in firefighting, like we all do. But then he also had a real fundamental background in communications, because one of his minors in college was, I think it was either his minor or his major was computer science.
Interesting.
And so he had an idea, and he liked to kind of program for fun, and he had a fascination with that. And he kind of got conscripted into our communications division for things like, reprogramming radios or rolling out a new comms plan.
Yeah.
So he was that guy. And that happens around a lot of fire departments around the United States. These people come.
As soon as they find out,
you're
like, oh, you have this skill set. All right.
Yeah. I was like, okay, I do not have that skill set. The skill set I have is this product BS or is it not? And I have the ability to talk to other firefighters and fire chiefs kind of fearlessly, like, hey, chief, I've got something. Please kick me out of the fire. Like, kick me out. If you don't like it, I want to know why. I want to know the good, the bad. I really want to know the ugly. So, lay it out there and kind of sit there and fearlessly receive that feedback. A lot of people just, that sort of dejection is enough to make them say, I'm just going to start a lemonade stand instead. But, for us, it was, hey, this is an important thing. Getting situational awareness at its highest level, getting information at its most intelligent level for our brother and sister firefighters was really important, because when you go to a firefighter funeral, especially in the line of duty death, it's horrible. It's really impactful and emotionally jarring in a lot of ways. And I would say that a lot of that was motivation. Like, if we can cut down on this, let's do that.
Yeah.
So once we kind of started passing ideas back and forth, we did a lot of what we call napkin sessions at coffee shops.
Yeah.
And, all right, well, let's do this. By happenstance, I had a friend from high school who I shared the idea with. He goes, hey man, I'll fund that. If you can find I'm not going to fund the whole thing, but if you can find a group of people to fund it, I think I've got an advisor for you who is in the tech industry as well.
That's
so
awesome.
Things started lining up.
Yeah.
So he coached us, our advisor, a guy named Scott Shearer, coached us into finding a development company to actually make this minimum viable product that was awesome. Living in 2013.
So you had a guy on your team that spoke tech, and you both speak firefighter. You understood the MVP, like, I know what it's got to do. And then they connected you with someone that can actually implement.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that the advisor really coached us, because, obviously we had a lot of people that were, I like to use the term sweaty in the fire service. Like I said, they were bringing their own devices to work. And like, well, it needs to do this and it needs to do that and blah, blah, blah. It was like, there were a lot of people, a lot of horses in this race. Yeah. And what our advisor really directed us towards was, don't boil the ocean. Figure out what's going to make an impact in the shortest amount of time and get that out there first, and make sure you're not wasting your time.
That's a great piece of advice. I'm going to definitely reuse that. Don't boil the ocean.
100%. It doesn't matter if you're making something that people hold in their hand or making some sort of tech piece of software that's going to enhance your workflows. It's really important to get clear, direct, and honest feedback. And you don't want, now, again, Silicon Valley is an entirely different scenario. They throw, in some instances, hundreds of millions of dollars behind things that just don't work or don't resonate with the general public. And they do that all the time. But there's so much money moving around in the private world that, the billionaires can afford to lose millions of dollars. But the second that you ask them to fund something that the government is going to purchase, they want no part of it.
Really? Why is that, do you think?
It's too slow. Honestly, we were trying to raise money during the unicorn era when Twitter was, getting good. Well, I'm not going to say Twitter. I'll just say companies were getting gajillion-dollar valuations, meaning, hey, I think that idea is worth this. Yeah.
Based on like zero revenue and zero profit and zero team. Like, okay, you got an idea? Yeah.
But their market is 8 billion people on planet Earth.
Yeah.
Ours at the time, to be realistic, was 1 million firefighters in the United States.
Yeah, and it's really only the top percent of that 1 million too, right? It's like the guys that are actually going to be on it. How many ICs are there, Really niche market.
Correct. Very, very niche market. And when you can spend the same amount of time, even if you spend 10x, 20x, 200x the amount of money in investment and get a turnaround and a result in 18 months, a lot of these people were like, hard pass. We will not fund this. Good luck. They gave us the kind of the
hey, we
the
like what you're
preppy
doing.
guy, the Ivy League double thumbs up. Thanks for what you're doing for America, but
it's not for us.
It's not for me. And so where we did end up finding a funding source was like people like that who didn't necessarily belong to a venture capitalist firm, but had been investors and maybe had like a ranch in Napa that got threatened by a fire.
So it's almost like philanthropic fun. Like, okay, I got funds I can do in the business world. I have a little bit of story. I maybe am a little retired or I'm a little whatever, but I also care because I have a personal connection to this.
Yes. And they definitely had a vested interest in trying to prevent line of duty deaths and injuries in firefighters.
Sure.
And so when we told that story in 2011 and 2012 and created and showed a solid business plan with a pathway towards revenue, they're like, okay, we'll give you several $1,000s or tens of thousands of dollars. And that's really what it took to kind of get our first MVP on the App Store. The cool thing that happened then is in 2013, we released it at a conference for technology sponsored by the International Association of Fire Chiefs.
Interesting.
In Coronado. And we thought, we were nervous. We thought, how's this going to go? Are we going to get laughed out of the room? Is the fire service ready for this? And so we had a room, and I'm going to flub up the numbers, but you'll get the idea, and your listeners will get the idea. I think the room had a capacity for 30 people, and there were all sorts of different conferences happening at that same time under that umbrella of tech and the fire service. And each company had a room for like 30 people, and they had attendees and the whole bit. When we featured Tablet Command, we had people lined up against the walls. We had people spilling out into the hallway. And it wasn't because we had, introduced this. Well, we did. We introduced a really unique product for the fire service. But I think one of the drivers for that is a lot of people had been thinking and dreaming of a product like this, and someone actually did it.
How did you tell them about it? Because it's like, hey, do they have to download it first? Or were you like, hey, come check out, we're going to show you at this event this software that does X, Y, Z? Or how did you actually get that message out there?
Yeah, so it had been in the App Store, and a few people had it in the audience. And we had some press releases, and we used social media and all the channels that we could. And again, this was a company of 3 people with maybe like a contractor.
Yeah.
So we were doing the very best that we could to get to evangelize the message, but literally the product was like 4 weeks old. And, we're basically holding up this newborn baby on the screen saying it does this and it does that and it does this. And literally like more people started packing in.
No way.
Yeah, it was really cool. And then 2 weeks later, the company took an interesting, I don't even want to say pivot. It just added another layer that we knew we were going to add, but it added it much more quickly than that. And that was because we featured the product at Firehouse World, which was always hosted in San Diego.
Oh, yeah. We used to go to that show. It's been a long time. Yeah, it's been a while now. But I love that show.
Yeah, they haven't hosted it in San Diego for a while, but, we had our humble little booth, and we kept on getting fire chiefs and, battalion chiefs and captains coming by, and they kept on saying the same thing. And I'm verbatim quoting, "You nailed it, you guys. You nailed it. You nailed it. You nailed it." So that was great. But then the caveat to that was, you nailed it, but it needs to be CAD integrated, meaning I don't want to go to this pre-built catalog that I built of all my battalions. I work for a fire department with 100 engines and 40 trucks. I can't do that. It needs to be linked to my CAD, and you need to have all that data in the back end.
Yeah. Was that
So
a
we're
like, oh sure, we'll just call the CAD providers and they'll give us their data, or was that a much bigger lift?
Man, how long do we have on this podcast?
I actually have a funny story of attempting to do the same and giving up. So I'm curious how you did it.
Well, luckily we had a really supportive fire chief at the time, and we had Will's expertise with CAD integration, and so we were able to use the pilot data from our fire department, and we had a good relationship with that company.
That's good.
To allow us to feature that data as like a pilot.
That's
and
awesome.
So our give was, well, also us being employees of that fire department, it was like the software is free. We're not charging you a dime for the software.
Yeah.
We just want to be able to show that through an API, we can feature real-time CAD integrated data with CAD comments and the actual resources that are going to this call, not something that I need to input as a user.
Because that takes all those steps of scrolling down what's coming out of it, right? If it's in the tool and you can just hit import, then it's there. Is that, I mean, I haven't used the tool, but I assume that's it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when you're rolling to a call, if you're CAD integrated, then all of your units auto-populate. So if you're rolling to a 3-alarm structure fire and you have 15 fire engines, 4 trucks or 5 trucks, depending on what the dispatch criteria is, 3 battalion chiefs, that's all auto-populating. Included is when units get swapped out for a closer unit, that also changes.
It shows it as going back in service, a new unit being assigned, that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So now you've got, if you will, your game pieces at your fingertips. You don't have to go into the box and grab them.
What
because
was it like?
Good?
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, what good is it if you still, tap and drag or listening and writing is still the same thing if you have to listen to the radio to get accuracy.
Yeah.
If you're already tapped into the CAD getting it, then you're way ahead of the incident, to the point where some incident commanders were saying, yeah, on the single alarm structure fire, I kind of got bored because I didn't have to write anything down.
Really, that's awesome. What is it like? I think we've had so many guests on the show, and like we have guys that come on and gals that come on, and it's like, I've started this business. Like my biggest struggle was like, I'm trying to think, like some of it's like equipment. Like we've had a lot of these leather companies come on and it's like, hey, I had to have this machine that could cut the leather a certain way, or like they're very manual and like you can touch the problems and the vernacular you use and the term, like, oh yeah, I just got to have an API to tie to a, like the dispatch terminal. Like I'm familiar in our world, we play in tech, but like, I feel like it's a big jump from the fire academy to understanding an API call back and forth between a CAD dispatch terminal to deliver something. Like, how did you develop that skill set? Because that's not a normal one that you just land in.
And that's not a skill set that I can take any ownership to.
Hey, but you can speak to it. So there's something there.
No, I can speak to it because I've, taken some time to learn about it. And I've also, in dealing with customers in trying to acquire customers in early days, we had to look at workarounds besides an API interface, or an API integration. So there were other ways to acquire that data in real time or near real time. But, the API integration was the foolproof and still remains the foolproof way to get your fire department's data in real time.
Talk me through some of the... What's that?
Well, I was going to say, I have to give all of that credit to Will, who his time in dispatch centers.
And then that was his background. He knew kind of, I know this stuff exists because I've been in the dispatch center before.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and he had dealt with that because of, medical reporting software and, NEFR's incident reporting software and things where maybe the data wasn't coming out in real time, but he was very familiar with ways to grab that call data and splash it onto an iPad to put it into very simple terms. And there's kind of a platinum way, and then there's like a very non-platinum way to do it. So it took a lot of political finesse to be able to get our first 2, 3, 5 enterprise customers that maybe belong to a JPA, which is like a dispatch center that dispatches for multiple agencies.
Yeah.
Because once we did the integration for one, it was available to all. And once the product proved value, and it did really quickly, those political conversations with the dispatch center and the CAD companies got smoother.
Yeah. Walk me through a little bit. I'm so curious. I'm just picturing like in my early days, I remember going to fire stations and like knocking on the door and trying to convince them like, hey, this is what we do. This is why we do it. And I'd be all excited. And then they'd, crush my dreams. But I'm curious, like, like it happens in small business. Like as you're developing this deal, like I'm sure there was, okay, I got to get an API. Oh shit. Okay. I can't get the API call. The vendor won't give it to me. Okay. What's my workaround or how did you actually like, what were the mechanics? Because I think about our audience, like so many people that listen to this show want to go start a business or thinking about getting into business. And I want to explore a little bit of that, like that head bumping that goes on and that I have to forge forward no matter what. What is my backup? What's my backup? My backup. Damn it. I know I need A. I can't have A. So how did you go through like banging your head on stuff? And can you think of any stories where there were just like roadblocks that seemed insurmountable that you were able to navigate around?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, those roadblocks were not technological. Will, and now we have a tech team that does what's called a tech discovery process, where they sit down with the IT teams in each agency and they say, okay, what are the ways that we can integrate? And, we always cross our fingers and hope that it's going to be an API integration. But then there are a couple other tools that we can pull out that we can use to integrate and get data in real time. Early on, though, those obstacles were human. And a lot of times it was the tension that existed and sometimes still exists between fire department IT and fire department ops. So fire department ops, show after show after show after show was giving us validation. Hey, I want this.
Yeah.
Fire department IT, whether they were employees of the county, employees of the fire department, employees of the city, they were like, because our primary platform was iOS.
Yeah.
And they were like, over my dead body, is this going to go onto? You're probably way too young to remember, and I'm dating myself a little bit. There was an Apple computer commercial a long time ago, and I think it was for the Mac 2 or something like that. And it features this very frumpy businessman that's like, he's the CEO of the company and he's touring a division, and he's all dappered up in his suit and he's very uptight. And, obviously the leader of the division is also nervous, and they're going cubicle to cubicle, and they get to one cubicle where the guy has an Apple computer and a Mr. Potato Head sitting on top of it. But he ends up producing these like really vibrant spreadsheets that lay out the financial progress of the company. And I think his parting line was something like, I didn't think Apple did anything serious. And he kind of takes some Mr. Potato Head off the top of the computer and says, does that help? And so there was an aversion in the IT world to anything iOS.
Yeah.
And so it literally was like going through some sort of mafia turnstile of like, well, it's going to be 6 weeks. And then 6 weeks, okay, it's 6 weeks. Well, but you haven't paid the integration fee. Well,
how do you get around that stuff?
This is the first time that you're telling us. So there's always some sort of reason why.
Yeah.
But it was never something that was technologically insurmountable. It was a person thing.
What's your strategy? How do you deal with people that are difficult?
So you got to kill them with kindness. You got to go back to referential customers and referential people like them that maybe went through the conversion process and say, hey, look, can I give you the number to the IT manager in blah, blah, blah agency? I think you guys will get along famously, and maybe he or she can answer some of those questions. And so we leverage some of our early wins to try and get around that. But quite honestly, some of our sales cycles were 8 months. Some of our sales cycles were 8 weeks. Some of our sales cycles were 8 days. And we had to be okay with some of our sales cycles being 8 years.
Yeah, it's just
and it was literally
what you're going to get.
It's just what you're going to get when you're talking about technology in the fire service.
Yeah.
Now, the nice thing about it is we have not churned out of any of those deployments. The term they use in the software world is churn. You pick up your phone, you play Angry Birds, you do it for 6 months, and it's like, I don't play Angry Birds anymore. It's dumb. I moved on to another game. That's churn. Well, people have not done that with Tablet Command. They haven't moved on and said, oh, there's something better, faster. And, the head start that we've had has been more like, we've broken, so much ground. I think about backcountry skiing sometimes, and like when you have to climb up to something that you want to ski, you got to break through like powder that's, up to your chest. And it's really hard work to be the lead skier.
Yeah.
But once you do, that pathway gets easier and easier and easier. But the one thing is that pathway has not gotten easier for new companies. And there aren't really companies doing what we're doing. And so we've developed, I think, a familiarity across the American, fire service and the Canadian fire service. And we're trying to add more bodies to sort of continue to increase our deployments.
Yeah. Has there been anything in your fire service training that's been helpful in your like formation of the business or your like ability to break through barriers?
I'd say, you learn in the fire service, there's multiple ways to skin a cat, so like one captain might have one way of extricating in a vehicle and you might have a different way. And the two of you got to collaborate.
Yeah.
You're also, the thing about the fire service is there's such a variety of backgrounds, it's inexcusable to try and big league somebody, and so you got to meet them where they are. I would say that's a big fire service skill with regard to like throwing 24-foot ladders to a second floor window to make a rescue, or to use Paratex to lift thousands of pounds off of somebody's lap. Not necessarily that, but maybe the networking effect, and then also just being authentic. It helps to go to fire stations, fire departments around the United States and have had some fires under your belt. To have had some extrications and rescues under your belt, so you can kind of talk shop and chop it up. Now, you definitely, I'm in awe of the American Fire Service. So, like if I roll into Charlotte, for example, I am in awe of that department. What an interesting, cool, modern department that sort of does, they absolutely do a fantastic job of maintaining their traditions while being super progressive.
Yeah, that's exactly how I describe those guys. Yeah, it's so funny.
Yeah, they're great. I mean, very professional. And I would love to spend more days with their battalion chiefs riding along just with my notebook wide open.
Yeah.
Learning from them as a new battalion chief. Collaborating with them as a 11-year captain, 12-year captain.
Yeah.
But you can't roll in and say, oh, I'm from California and we go to this many fire, you can't do that. And it's inexcusable, and it's not a way to earn more business. It's not a way to create, trust and partnership. So that's another thing you just learn. I mean, the first fire that kicks your ass as a captain or a firefighter, you hope that person learned humility. And then you take that humility when you're meeting new customers, because you have no idea what hazards they're facing or problems they're facing. And all you can do is sit down and hope to learn and relate some of those as well.
Have you had any demos you've gone on that like went particularly differently than you expected?
Let's see. I've had a fire chief like whip out his credit card, like, hey, I want 10 licenses right now. And the unfortunate thing was having to explain that there's a whole tech process, because he was like, well, I want it now. He wanted to replicate the experience that he has on his iPhone, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, and there's an integration process, but yes, we're going to support you.
Yeah.
I would also say that we did not expect, and early on, there were some fire departments that, I call them the leatherheads. I mean, I have a leather helmet, but the leatherheads are like this general category that I use for fire departments that have so much rich tradition in the American Fire Service. I mean, they could write books. I think about Sacramento, I think about Charlotte, I think about Stockton, it's a smaller department, but I think about Oceanside, California is one of our earlier.
Yeah.
I think about a Denver, a San Francisco, where, at first blush, they would say, it's cool, but not in this department. Technology really doesn't have a receptive audience here. Those were some shocking surprises when those fire departments that I mentioned became early customers or early interest takers that were willing to go through some of the pain points of the actual technical integrations to deploy this product.
That's cool.
So those were the biggest surprises. Like, okay, we're going to sit down with this group of customers. We're probably going to talk about Monday Night Football and figure out what beer we're going to drink later on after the show.
Yeah.
And then for them to say like, okay, well, what is the process? And okay, when can we meet with you next? When can you be at our department? That was like a really pleasant surprise.
That's cool. Can you tell me a little bit about the guys that you work with at your station? Like, are there any other
in my fire station?
Yeah, there any, like, because I feel like in this industry, like every fireman's got a buddy who's got another business, or like, is that a common thing in your station, or what are they like?
Well, yeah, I would say that certain guys have like construction businesses. Certain guys have businesses in the fire service. My mind is blanking on who they are with fire specific. I mean, I know plenty of guys from other departments that have like leather and things like that.
Yeah.
But the thing that surprises me about the guys that I've worked with, whether it was in at my rescue company, like I have a kid who he sold BMWs for, just a bull, like would break through any door, but could park a boat on a dime. He's one of our boat operators as well, because we have a whole marine division.
Yeah.
And then has a mind like a steel trap for rescue systems, rope systems.
Interesting.
Always wants to train, but then has this incredible knowledge about software as a service. And you're like, where did you come from? Why are you in the fire service? Well, I like the fire service.
Huh.
I've got guys that have background. Basically, we're like lifelong fire aficionados. But they were college athletes. They had the opportunity to go play college soccer, college football. And then, the fire service was sort of that siren song that attracted them to their next career venture.
Yeah.
I have been so lucky to work with just the best individuals. I would literally take a bullet for the guys that I work with in the station.
What is it that binds you guys so much?
I work with a gal who from time to time who played basketball at Vanderbilt, and then I think she transferred to UC Santa Barbara or vice versa. Probably one of the smartest people that I know, can outlift all of us, and she'll probably be the chief of the department someday if she wants to.
That's awesome.
Because she's that smart.
Yeah.
And so I could go on and on about the people that I work with.
What is it that binds you guys together? Like, is there a common, obviously the fire service, but like, when you have a crew that has good cohesion, I feel like whether it's a business crew, it's a fire service crew, whatever, that cohesion is so important. I always like to dive into that a little bit and hear what makes people tick and what the conversations are like.
I think it's like a willingness to be authentic. We get immediate feedback when we screw up, because we get an opportunity at a lot of reps. And so again, that's sort of common, like, hey, I'm giving you the green light to punch me square in the nose if I ever get off script on this or that. And so like, keep me honest. I think, a willingness to do that. And I think maybe some of that comes from like my college sports background, where it's like, if you didn't train hard enough, it is going to really show right now.
Yeah.
If you didn't read the playbook, it's really going to show right now. And so trying to surround yourself with people that are going to help you stay real and keep it real, I think is probably our biggest, common bond. In a lot of cases, we went through probationary school together or recruit school together. And so we know where, the warts are. Everybody knows, that you have warts, and, where your bodies are buried, and, all those other comparisons. And so to then come off as somebody different than that and like be okay with that is not the kind of environment that I ever was attracted to. I wanted to be an environment where I could say, exactly what I needed to say to someone, and someone else could say it back to me. And we're going to grow from it.
Are you still in the fire service? Are you still working a station somewhere?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm back on shift day after tomorrow.
That's
I love
awesome.
it.
How
I'm 52 and I wish I had 20 more years. I love it more now than I think I've ever loved it.
What's different about it?
I guess looking in the rearview mirror, like, hey, I survived that is part of it. And I want to do my very, very best to help other people survive. But also, you just look, again, going back to the earlier question, the quality of people. And I went to a really fancy college. I could have gone and done anything. One of the ways that I got into the fire service is to try and make money for grad school. But that type of person that rolls into the fire station, they're just authentic and they're hard workers and they're real, and I'm just I have a deep sense of love for those people, and I think that's what and kind of looking back on it now, knowing that the sun is starting to set. I mean, it's late afternoon for me.
Sure,
it's not dusk, but it's late afternoon. And knowing that at some point in my life, I'm not going to be surrounded by that every 4 days is sad, And so I'm just really, really kind of taking inventory of the quality of folks that I've gotten to work with.
Yeah.
And I was a teacher and a coach, and a lot of it relates back to coaching and the kind of kids that, I'm trying to coach, and the kind of kids that I'm coaching them to be outside of the sport.
Yeah.
I think it's just that.
Can you think of any like specific stories from the fire station that were formative in your business career, or that that helped you in your business career, whether it was advice someone gave you or like a time that was particularly helpful for launching and growing your business that's from the station?
Yeah, I think that it didn't come from my own station, but one of the most formative experiences we had is when Will and I brought the technology over to San Francisco Fire to show it to someone who currently works for the company, Dave Franklin, who's a retired division chief from San Francisco. And, he works for Cal OES and just a fire brainiac. And then another division chief who's retired named Tom Saragusa, who is probably one of the straightest shooters that I've ever met in the fire service. And it was like, okay, you guys, it's 2014, 2015-ish. Let's figure out if we're wasting our time and we need to go, do something else with our lives.
How did you guys do that?
What's that?
How did you guys do that? What was that process like for figuring it out?
We brought the tablet across the bay bridge, literally, to the San Francisco Training Division. And we obviously had scheduled a meeting with Chief Saragusa and said, all right, we're going to show you something. And, we want your direct feedback. The words, I'm going to use clean words for the way that exchange went. But he basically said, all right, sit the bleep down and show me your whatever it is trinket that you have there, and I'm going to tell you exactly what's bleeped up with it. I mean, literally. And we had a civilian with us at the time who was helping the company, and he was blown away that firefighters talk to each other.
Yeah,
it was like,
I tell people all the time, you got to have thick skin to be in this space, and it is not always very politically correct. So you better just hold on.
So he went through it, and the end of the conversation, which was about an hour conversation of going through the product, it was like, well, can it do this? I mean, can it do that? All right, but if it does this, it can't do that, can it? It was like, no, it can, and it does. Here, this is how you do it. And he used that term too. He goes, all right, you guys, you kind of nailed it, but it's never going to pass muster for our own IT department.
Yeah.
Because we're just so old and political and bleeped up and blah, 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 which they are not. They're a great, great traditional department. And, 6 months later, we got a call from their IT manager and they became customers.
No way. That's cool.
And so that was a really, like, we expected to like kind of tuck the tablets under our arms, sort of toast the death of this company and move on, or figure out what the new business plan was going to look like. But instead, his affirmation was like, keep going the way you're going. And I get that affirmation all the time in my own department. Guys are like, hey, I really love it when it does this. Hey, do you think you could add that feature? Hey, could it do this? Could it do that?
Yeah.
And it's really valuable feedback.
That's really cool. What's it been like having to figure out the practical steps after that? So you stress test it in 2014, whatever. And it's like
building the airplane while in flight.
Yeah. And then you got to like, how do you do payroll and like taxes and like all that stuff? That's all like, oh, great. Now I got this app that can fly to the moon, but the government still wants their piece. And I still got to make bills and I still have to like, how do you build the rest of the business in addition to just that
that's
piece?
A good question. So when we raised funds, we also formed a board, and we formed it with people that are investors in the software space. And so with regard to the due diligence and the apparatus and infrastructure of a company, if you will, they were great guides with that, whether it was like contract accountant to do our taxes for us, a contract accountant to help us with payroll, a contract lawyer to make sure that we were executing end user license agreements correctly. So, bringing in a consultant for price structure and keeping the lights on when Will and I were both in the fire service.
Yeah.
Will retired in, I think, 2020 or 2019, took early retirement to help run the company full time. And we decided, I'm better serving the company on the other end of this microphone as a working firefighter using the product, talking about the ins and outs and talking to other firefighters that are also still on the job rather than, having that layer of separation. But to fill in those gaps of, as you mentioned, accounting, payroll, sales, tracking, customer relations management, all of that, we started hiring and building the company and funding the company. We did, a few rounds of funding the company to build in those personnel. Yeah. And now I think we're up to like 16 full-time people, 18.
That's awesome.
Full-time with, a couple contractors floating in and out as well.
That's pretty cool. How did you like put together that funding model? Like, were you out soliciting, looking for that sort of thing? Or was it something that people were like, hey, I'm interested and I want to invest in you guys? Or what was that like?
Yeah, no, it was, initially it was kind of these informal conversations like, this is what it does. This is what we think. This is how we think it can impact the lives of firefighters. And so those first couple investors like, all right, I'm in. Yeah. Here's a check for $25,000.
Yeah.
But they were also personal acquaintances. So it was like, if you mess this up, you will be pulling half-calf decaf macchiatos in Starbucks until you're 85 years old to pay me back.
Yeah, and you're like,
so it was like, shit, all right, dude, I'm, you know me, I know you, I'm not gonna, lose your money.
Yeah, that's a lot of weight to carry though, because you're in a startup and you might, like most startups fail. Actually, almost all of them fail. So
97%.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was we kind of had to be supremely confident. It's like, look, it's fourth down and there's 10 seconds left in the game and we're on our own 25-yard line, but I am going to heave that pass in the back of the end zone and you will catch it.
Yeah.
And we will win the game. It had to be that sort of blind Joe Montana confidence of like, let's keep it loose, let's keep it easy, and we're going to win this game.
What's the biggest Hail Mary you ever threw?
Oh, well, I would say Tablet Command is the biggest Hail Mary in general, but the biggest Hail Mary within Tablet Command was probably some of the bigger big city departments that we have, in our customer base. So the San Francisco was probably the biggest early on. Charlotte was an interesting one because that did start with a lower level style of integration that we don't like to do, but that and the fear was, well, they'll never convert to a cleaner, more accurate integration, and they did because of their affinity to the product.
Yeah. There's a lot of tech red tape down there too. They have a lot of techie folks. It's a unique agency that's just like,
it's cool.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
It's really cool. I want to go back. The raising money was a Hail Mary, sitting across from someone and saying, please give me $100,000. Please give me $300,000. We have a real business. This is the revenue that we're making. Those always feel like Hail Marys because it's like, I'm a 26-year firefighter with a BA in biology. I do not have an MBA. I did not go to an Ivy League.
Yeah.
I didn't go to Cal or Stanford. I didn't go to UCLA. So like, convincing them that like we're authentic participators in the ground floor of the American Fire Service and that we have identified a need and it will produce a business, but then also convincing them that it's not going to produce a yield in 18 months like most of the businesses
you gotta be
that they're familiar with.
Yeah. Like, hey, this is the cycle. This is the model. This isn't tomorrow. This is a little farther.
It's a long cycle.
Yeah.
It's a long cycle.
What's it like when you talk to other firefighters? And we hear people all the time where they're like, in the throes of trying to raise funds, and they're like, they're not maybe prepared for getting beaten up at the investor table, where it's like, all right, do you have XYZ? Have you thought through the business model? Like, what's your advice to someone that's pitching, like getting ready for their first round, seed round, pre-A, whatever?
Find a friend who is an investor and walk in and say these words. I'm not going to ask you for a penny, but can I have an hour of your time? And if you like buy them a lunch, buy them a cup of coffee, an espresso, bring them chocolate cake, whatever it is, because if they're an investor and they're doing well, they can make time, and just, I would say, look, I would lead with, this is for first responders that make your life better. They make all of our lives better. And so, I'm going to show you our business model now. I'm going to show you our pitch deck, which is basically like a PowerPoint presentation.
Do you recommend someone always has a pitch deck ready?
I think so. Yeah. Only to keep you on track and on script, because some investors will try and take you down a rabbit hole to poke holes in your business. Others will try and take you down a rabbit hole just to be mean.
Oh, really?
We've had that before.
So they're not everyone's all like, oh, happy go lucky. Oh, we love what you're doing here. Let's be nice to you. They're gonna beat you up
some
a little bit.
folks regard it, there's just guys that want to hear themselves talk, and they want to, I don't know if they got beaten up, on the playground when they were a little kid, and, whatever, they're taking that drama out, during the investment pitch. But, I've certainly had that, where it's like, hey, look, I can provide a better answer for you offline, but I want to stay on script, and that's what a pitch deck will really help you do, besides the fact that it just provides visuals. And what a good advisor will do, and again, you want to reassure them, look, I am not going to ask you for a dime. And sometimes they'll say, well, wait a minute. Now, maybe I do want to, but it lowers the defenses when you're like, hey, I just need help.
Yeah. You didn't ask them hey,
you can go to
and prep for your, like, getting ready for my first.
It's just like prepping for a debate.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like prepping for like a presidential debate. Like, where are they going to poke holes in your policies? It's where are they going to poke holes in your business model and your assumptions. Usually it's an assumption that they're going to really poke holes. Like, and then you either need to dial back and like lower your expectations and assumptions and manage those expectations. If you're making any widget and you say, all right, we have the capacity to produce 400 widgets this year, and we think that we're going to sell all 400 of those widgets at this price point. They may say, okay, show me some comps. What are some other nearby products that have also sold for that price point, and at what rate? And then when do they stop using? And then the other thing too, and I don't have experience in the one and done. Like, if I purchase a Halligan, I'm probably not going to purchase a yearly subscription to Halligan.
No, it's like you want to. It's fine.
And I don't want to produce a Halligan that breaks after 365 days.
Yep.
So it's a way ways to repenetrate the marketplace after you've sold this wow product. It could be a really wow product, but then how are you going to maintain? Yeah, you got to have that recurring revenue stream. Now, software, that's a licensing thing. That's software as a service, because you want to be able to show that. But, you want to convince, the initial seed round is, we think this is going to be a hit. And the investor really has to say, really, when you boil down to it, look, I'm going to give you 50,000. I'm never going to see that money again.
And are you asking them to bet on you as a person or bet on your product?
Yes.
In that seed round?
Yes, to both.
Yeah.
It's betting is, because if you look like somebody that doesn't know what they're doing, and I've had people say, I'm not tooting a horn, I'm saying, look, we're investing in you.
Yep.
And that's like, Oh,
I think
wow.
people
That's a
discount that.
commitment, right?
I mean,
What's that?
I think people from the entrepreneurial space sometimes discount that. Sometimes people will say, look, I don't think what you're doing is actually going to be successful, but I think you're going to be successful. So I'm going to give you this first round in hopes that you figure out that thing sucks, but that'll push you to the thing that doesn't suck. And I'll invest then the second time.
Yeah, totally. And in some respects, like the digital tactical worksheet doesn't suck, but it couldn't exist on its own.
Yeah.
It had to be part of a CAD integrated ecosystem that provided so many other components of situational awareness. And so that's where it evolved to. And we sort of let the fire service take us in that direction, like a river carrying you, downstream. We listened. That was a really important quality of our company. It continues to be an important quality that we listen to our customers and we try to produce according to their feedback. We consolidate, we aggregate, it's those things that we've all been waiting for that needed to appear, like I said, under a single pane of glass.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting. The customer feedback has to drive business. And when I think about our business, I tell people all the time, like, look, I own 100% of the business. And so at the end of the day, I'm responsible financially for the way the business operates. Yeah. Well, stressful and good at the same time. Right. But the firefighter on the end of the hose line ultimately is who I decide to be accountable to. I'm not accountable to, you think about publicly traded businesses, which are great. But at the end of the day, if I'm building lights and I'm a publicly traded business, it's a difficult balancing act to make the decision that's best for the firefighter at the hose line and for the investor who I have a fiduciary responsibility to be accountable to. And so I'm curious, like, if you had to break down the way you evaluate your responsibility to the first responder and you were listening to the customer, and then you evaluate the difference in being an investor-backed company versus being bootstrapped, like I've built this thing from the ground up. So many times people are like, I just want to immediately go grab outside funding instead of like, especially in the physical stuff space where there's not, need this stuff. It's like, sometimes it's okay. But then how do you balance that? I want to know what your approach is to giving the investor their return and giving the firefighter what they need.
Yeah, I mean, in some respects, we've really put the investor on the back burner and just said, "Look, trust us. We're growing every year, and we've got 0% churn. So we are obviously onto something. There's a there, and the most important thing to our company is 99.99999% uptime. It's actually not, it's right in that realm. And so uptime with the product because it's a mission critical product." And then 99.9999% responsiveness to customer service. Because the last thing I wanted to do is walk through the apparatus bay doors at 6:30 in the morning in front of an engine company and a truck company, and everybody jeer and say, "Hey, here comes the charlatan from Tablet Command." Thanks for the vaporware, guy. So that really, just every day I show up to work and see the product deployed in our own engines, in the hands of our own workers, the people that I've got to serve alongside with, that is 100% the litmus test to accountability.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where, and it's like, hey, look, and again, the investor that came on board was like, the early investors were like, "Oh, I'm just kissing this money away. Good luck. Maybe you'll get it back."
Yeah.
The later stage investors were like, "I understand it's going to be a long cycle. Try and shorten it as much as you can."
Yeah. How do you do the dilution? Like, is that a tough thing for you to do and say like, all right, bring another round in, I'm going to dilute one more time. This sucks. Or is it like, that's part of the game. I just know that I'd rather have 2% of a $1 billion company than 100% of a $2 company.
Look, I probably am going to look back on this when I'm 70 years old and go, what an idiot for how the company was set up, from a percentage wise and control and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But the thing I'll say is like, I kind of went through a period of like getting hung up on that. And I was like, look, I can't even get hung up on that. So if we do another round and the pie gets bigger, but my slice gets smaller, I'd rather have a sliver of $1 billion pie than like half of a $10 million pie.
Yeah.
That's kind of you know what I mean? I'd rather have a small slice of the $1 billion pie. In the end, that's much bigger than, the $10 million pie.
That's something that I think a lot of times when people are asking about funding their business and starting their business and putting together all those processes and systems, it's like you can get held up on well, yeah, but I got to give a little away or whatever. And I was just curious, like, what, maybe not specifically, but what would you, or specifically, what would you do different if you could start back over again, start a new startup? What would a firefighter need to know that you've already learned about that process?
I would say like stay in control as long as you can, but and we are, both Will and I are in control. We're the majority business owners,
That's
but
awesome.
but stay in control, trust your vision, and then really view each investor through the lenses of that vision. And you'll get it literally when you roll up onto a call, like an emergency call, when the victim or the bystanders are squirrely.
Yeah.
When the situation is not right. You've developed that sixth sense.
Yeah,
Apply that to people. And it goes both ways. I mean, we look back at examples like Theranos, Elizabeth Holmes danced and, did all these tricks to have these investors pour in billions of dollars on the fact that or hundreds of millions of dollars on this, idea that a single drop of blood will, create immortality and, allow you to see your health. And they poured it in and it was a fraud.
Yeah.
And that happens all the time in Silicon Valley. I would like to think that firefighters who are starting businesses are real, authentic people, and they deserve organic, real, authentic, altruistic investors that may not, demand an immediate return. And if they are demanding that, move away, move to somebody else.
Yeah, there's always more
they
investors out there. There's thousands and thousands
and they're
and
good
thousands
people.
of people. Yeah.
Yes.
Did you ever do a
Yes.
friends and family round?
Yeah, we did. That was our first 2 rounds were friends and family.
Gosh.
I mean, some of them were investors, but they were friends or family.
Yeah.
And that can complicate
I was going to
things,
say, any landmines to step around, or did it work pretty well for you guys, or how did that go?
There were some kerfuffles along the way, but we've worked out all that stuff. It was really more like everybody kind of getting on the same page and rowing the boat in the same direction. And again, something I learned early from Alan Brunacini, both in person and in reading his works, is I remember I attended one of his conferences and he held up 3 fingers to make the letter M. He goes, everything you do needs to be M centered. Well, M is the mission. So what is the mission? The mission for us is to provide software that can enhance your safety and make you more situationally aware. As long as we're doing that, and we are going to have some missteps.
Sure.
Of course, we're human beings. We all have thorns. We're all porcupines and cacti in our own way.
Sure.
If we could spend another podcast listing all of my flaws, that would be hours long. But in the end, you got to figure out what the hell the mission is and get on board with what that mission is. And sometimes that means that your ego takes a hit. I know mine has. Mine has taken a hit several times, and that's just the way it is. You have to sometimes put your own egos aside, and that's true in the fire station, right? You stay mission centered. Sometimes it's not about you or your persona or any of that. It's about what's the mission. Our mission is to create life-saving software that enhances the workflows in the fire station, and we want to get that to as many fire departments as we can in the continental United States and Canada.
That's awesome. Well, what's next? What's happening as you look forward into the future of how you help expand that mission and touch more first responders? What should our viewers and listeners think about for you guys in the future?
Well, look for Tablet Command in a city near you. We attend a lot of different shows. So we go to FDIC. We're going to be down at LA Fire Chiefs this week. We'll be at Cal Chiefs, but then we were just in Columbus, Ohio for Firehouse Expo.
Oh, yeah.
And you can go out there and talk to current Tablet Command customers. City of Columbus, an amazing city in Ohio, where the Ohio State University is. We're very proud to have them as customers. And so we basically have a sales force that are composed of firefighters paired with sales professionals from public safety. And we basically barnstorm around in the country in different ways to demo Tablet Command and say to our customers that we're always open for these discussions of how we can enhance your safety and efficiency on the fire ground. So
that's awesome. Where can they find you?
They can find us at tabletcommand.com. They can find us on Instagram, X, or formerly known as Twitter. They can find us on LinkedIn for some more scholarly articles, Facebook or Meta. And then they can find us, on a podcast near you. They can find us at any of the large major shows. And if they want us to come to them, we will get on an airplane and come to them.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Andy, thank you so much for joining us on the 2448. This has been a really cool story. I really like it's a little different business than the types of companies we have spoken to in the past. I think it's unique with the Silicon Valley investor startup software feel is so different, but it's
the intrigue.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So thanks for being on the show. It's been a real pleasure.
It's been my honor. I really enjoyed our conversation, Sam, and just really honored that you guys would reach out and want to hear our story. So thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Fantastic. Good luck to you, and stay safe out there.
Thank you. You as well.
Yep. Bye now. Hey guys, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something. If you want to be on the show or you know someone who should, head over to the2448.com and submit your business. Don't forget to follow and subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. If you thought it was 4 stars, still give us 5 stars or I will find you. See you next time. Later.